jump in and use the live chat function today. We're going to have a highly interactive class and going to be asking you lots of questions as we go. So make sure, whatever platform you're using, use the live chat function today. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are in the world, and we're ready to get started. Let's get going. So welcome everybody to E2 English Essentials. Today we're going to be focusing on essay writing. So we're going to give you the tools to help you succeed and write a great essay. Now, have a look at these 4 images. Which one of these describes how you feel about essay writing? Would love to know. Let us know in the live chat. Type 1, 2, or 3, or 4 about how you feel about essay writing. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling a 1 or a 2 or a 3, and I can assure you by the end of this class, you'll be feeling much more like the minions that are in the 4th image there. Now let's look at what we will take away from this lesson. We're going to learn today how to feel confident about writing an essay. We're going to give you the tools to do this, and one of those important tools is how to use the E2 method. This E2 method is going to help guide us step by step in writing a great essay. Here's what we will cover in today's lesson. We're going to look at essential essay tips. We're going to use the E2 method, and we're going to write a sample essay together. Today, we're going to give you 2 tips for essay writing. These are going to help guide you through, and they are essential for writing any great essay. The E2 method is also going to guide us step by step into writing an essay, and our sample essay we're going to write together. Now here are the essential essay tips to know before we get started. We are going to look at them in depth in this lesson, but let's know them now before we jump into things. The first one is creating vocabulary lists. Now doing this, so creating lists or mind maps related to common essay topics is going to help expand your language and your vocabulary so that whenever you encounter any essay topic, you can feel confident that you have the appropriate vocabulary to do this. It also helps you learn new words, which is a really important part of English in general. Our second essay tip is about using examples and explanations. Now, this is extremely important in essay writing. It helps us to develop our ideas and our arguments so that we have more reasons behind what we're arguing. And also, it allows us to address the prompt properly. So if we're given an essay prompt, we want to be able to respond to it properly, and using examples and evidence is one way to do this. Now, if you're following along closely today, I highly recommend that you download this free practice prompt and essay structure. I've got one here with me. It is super handy. You can actually click into it and type as you go. So click the link to download this in the chat, and you'll get a copy of this free downloadable. There are essay prompts in there and also the essay structure, the E2 method as well. If you're looking to further improve your English, including your reading and listening and speaking, I highly recommend you check out our affordable English courses at e2english.com, and there you can do lots of practice activities, tests, and recorded classes as well. So click the link in the chat or the description to learn more about that. Back to our essential essay tip, learning about how to create a vocabulary list. We're going to do one right now. And the vocabulary mind map that we're going to create is about employment. So let's create one about this topic. I want to know from you, what are some words related to employment? So type your ideas into the live chat function right now. What are some words related to having a job, having employment. What words come up for you? Think about that now, and that will help us create a great vocabulary mind map together. Let's have a look at some of the ideas that I came up with. Here are some of them. I'll read through the vocabulary that I came up with. Communication, company, employer, employee, occupation, office, work-life balance, teamwork, career, recruitment, commute, job satisfaction, work, and professional. You can kind of see that once you come up with one word for a particular topic, it helps you branch off and come up with other words. For example, like going from employer to employee. Now, keep this in the back of your mind. It's going to help us later in our essay, so make sure you keep it in mind. Before we proceed, I want to make an important point about vocabulary. And just navigating the cursor here. Perfect. Having the right vocabulary to help us is going to help address the essay prompt really well and make sure that we avoid repetition. So when we're writing an essay, we might use a lot of the same words often, but having great vocabulary is going to help us avoid that repetition and boost our score as well on our essay. Great, let's keep going. Here we go. And here we are back at the vocabulary mind map. Great. So we're now going to look at the E2 method together. It's broken down into 3 steps. The first one is how to analyze the essay prompt. So when we're analyzing an essay prompt, we want to know what type of essay it is that we're looking at. We also want to consider what kind of clues does the essay prompt give us. So that kind of background information will help to lead us how we need to answer our essay question. Number 2, before we move on to number 2, it's important that you know 3 common essay types. So these essay types might come up in an English test or maybe an English assignment. So great for you to know these common essay types. One is opinion essays. That's where you're asked to give an opinion about an issue. Another one is problem or solution essays, where you have to identify a problem and then come up with a solution for that problem. And then also advantages, disadvantages essays. So that is where you need to look at both sides of a topic, both the positives and the negatives. In step 2, we're going to plan using the E2 essential structure. So what that means is we need to know this essential structure before we plan. It's going to help organize our ideas well and logically. Then we'll be able to plan our body paragraphs together, and that is the most important part of the English essay. Finally, you can then write your essay and then check over your work. And we always want to write with a criteria in mind. So it doesn't matter if you're doing an English test, an English assignment for college or uni, or any other type of essay, you always want to keep a criteria in mind. That's going to help guide you for what the marker is looking for. And of course, at the end of an essay or while you're going through it, perhaps, you're going to proofread your work so you can eliminate mistakes and boost your score as well. Let's now look at a sample essay prompt together. Here it is. Nowadays, many employers allow employees to work from home a few days per week. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this? So, let's apply the method to this essay prompt. Let's go step by step. First step, analyzing the prompt. So what are we going to do here? Looking at the essay prompt, we're first going to identify what type of essay prompt this is. So I'd like to know from you now, type your answer into the chat. What type of essay prompt do you think this is? And you might remember from earlier when we looked at 3 common essay types. If you guessed advantages, disadvantages essay, you are correct. Now, can you write about the advantages only in your essay? Let us know in the chat function, yes or no. Can you write only about the advantages in your essay? Hopefully that's an easy one. Absolutely not. It's really important that you write about both sides of the issue. The question is asking you about both the advantages and the disadvantages. So important that you address both sides. Then we need to identify the exact issue or topic that we're writing about. From this question, we can't really tell. It says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this? We have to go back into the essay prompt. We have to go to the background information and get some context. We need to notice this context and background information, and that will help us figure out what the topic is of this essay. So let's look for some clues that tell us about the topic. We mention words like employers and employees, and of course, we can figure out this issue is all about working from home. Great. Now, a really important point about analyzing the essay prompt. This step is crucial. This is often where students lose marks because they haven't addressed the prompt properly. So doing those first couple of steps where you identify the essay type and then identify the topic or issue and what the essay prompt is asking you to do, that is a really, really important step, and it will help boost your score if you do it properly. So let's avoid losing those marks and make sure you follow this step accordingly. We're now ready to plan using the E2 essential structure. So before we can plan our essay, we need to know the structure of the entire essay and also our body paragraphs as well. You might be familiar with this 4-paragraph structure for an essay. So it starts off with the introduction. We have 2 body paragraphs and a conclusion. In the introduction, we have a background sentence, and in that background sentence, we're introducing the topic in general. We then reword the prompt, which means we're going to paraphrase the prompt. We're going to use different words, and this is where our vocabulary can come in handy. And finally, we have a thesis statement. Our thesis statement is where we identify our position. Now, in this particular essay type, you need to talk about what you consider to be the advantages and disadvantages. You need to outline those in your position and make your thesis statement clear. In your first body paragraph, you might identify the advantages. Now, you watching at home, let us know in the chat how many advantages should you discuss in your essay. Type a number into the chat box now. If you said 2 advantages, you're correct. In the second body paragraph, you're going to discuss the disadvantages, and of course, again, you're going to outline 2 disadvantages. Keep it consistent. Finally, in the conclusion, you're going to make a broad statement, and you're going to summarize your arguments or opinions, which means you need to summarize very briefly what the advantages and disadvantages were in the essay. Great. What do you think is the most important part of the essay to plan? Let us know in the chat right now what part of the essay is most important to plan. That is your body paragraphs, your 2 body paragraphs. You want to be efficient and plan this part because this is the most important part of your essay where most of your writing is going to happen. So we're ready to plan our body paragraphs, But before we do, we need to know the structure of a body paragraph. So let's look at that in depth now. When we're planning a body paragraph, we need to have a set of sentences that follow this structure. And so you'll notice the letters on the side, and we're going to go through each one and what they stand for. The first sentence in your body paragraph needs to be a topic sentence. Going back a step, it's really important to mention here that this is a double idea paragraph. You might remember that we need to outline 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages. And in order to do that, we need a double idea paragraph where we can highlight both those ideas. So we must begin with a topic sentence. A topic sentence is a broad sentence. It tells your reader what they're going to read about in that paragraph. Then P, the first P stands for point 1, and in this case, you're going to talk about the first advantage, advantage number 1. You then need to extend about this point. So this is where our essential essay tip comes in handy, using examples and explanations. When you extend your ideas about the advantage, you need to use examples and reasons and explain your idea fully so that you can get full marks when you're responding to the essay prompt. After that, the next P stands for point 2, where you make your second advantage known, and you then need to extend it again with examples and explanations. It's important to note that body paragraph 2, when you're outlining the disadvantages, follows the exact same structure. And this is what it looks like. Again, you have a topic sentence, you make your first point, you extend that with explanations and evidence, you make a second point with your second disadvantage, and you extend again with examples and explanations. Now, we are ready to plan. And before we do, let's recall the essay question while we plan. Remember that our essay prompt is asking us to outline the advantages and disadvantages of working from home. So that is exactly what we need to do when we're planning now. We're going to follow this same structure. It's time to plan, and we're going to use this double idea paragraph structure to help us plan. You might notice I took away the topic sentences out of both of these, and that's because you don't need to plan a topic sentence. This is the most important part of your paragraph, the 2 points and how you extend them. Let's plan. Now, what are some advantages and disadvantages from working from home? Let us know your ideas in the chat now. It'd be great to hear what you think are some of the positives and the negatives of employees working from home. Try to think about the impact on the employee itself, so someone who's working, but also the employer, the overall company that they're working for. What kind of positives and negatives there are for both of those types of people. Here are some of my ideas. So I begin my first point, my first advantage, talking about work-life balance. This is an advantage of working from home. Now, I'm going to extend this, and I'm going to use that essential essay tip of examples and explanations. One example of work-life balance is having more time for personal hobbies and family. My second advantage is about having more job options, and I'm going to extend this with ideas about living anywhere and working from those places. We're ready to plan body paragraph 2, our disadvantages, and here are my ideas now following the same double idea paragraph structure. My first disadvantage is about feeling lonely and isolated. That might be a downside to working from home. And this might mean that there's no face-to-face interactions happening in the office. Another disadvantage is about mixing work and personal life, and that may look like that an employee has trouble taking breaks. So as you can see, this is a great plan. It's brief, it follows the double idea paragraph structure, and it allows me to write a great essay because I've planned thoroughly, but I've used dot points, no sentences here. Now that we've got our plan ready, we're ready to write. And as we go, I highly recommend now, the link is available in the chat and the description. Grab yourself a copy of this, click on the link, and you can actually type into it as we start to write our essay together now. So highly recommend this. Download this now in the chat. And of course, if you're looking to further improve your English, make sure you check out our affordable English courses here on e2english.com. Great. We're ready to write our essay and then check over our work. We're going to begin with the introduction, and recall that we need a background sentence. We're going to reword the prompt and write a thesis statement. In order to do this, the first two sentences, I'm going to use the original essay prompt to help me write those first two sentences. So let's have a look at how to do that. And this is where that essential essay tip comes in handy. So we're going to look at some vocabulary that can help us write those first two sentences. Remember this mind map? It's going to help us with topic-specific words and paraphrasing. So when we're rewording the prompt and coming up with ideas for those first two sentences, it's great to use this topic-specific vocabulary that we've come up with previously. Here is the prompt again, and let's look at how I've paraphrased it. Let's look at the first sentence. In the past, most people commuted to their office jobs 5 days a week. So I've broadly introduced the topic, but I've also talked about what used to happen in the past, how employees used to come to the office 5 days a week. And you might have noticed I used the word commuted, and that was from our vocabulary mind map. It gives us some background information about the topic, which is really important. Let's look at the second sentence. This is where I have reworded the prompt. Recently, more employers let employees work flexibly. And we can see it's been paraphrased from, nowadays, many employers allow employees to work from home a few days per week. So we can see some of the words have been reworded. And there are our first two sentences. Now, before we continue, it's really important to note that paraphrasing the prompt in the beginning in your introduction is a really key step. And using that vocabulary, that essential essay tip, leaning on that vocabulary mind map or a vocabulary list that you've generated is going to be very useful here because it will help you reword what the prompt is saying. Let's get back into it. We're now ready to write our thesis statement, which is what the essay is going to be about and our position. So, what could be a possible thesis statement? Write your example in the chat now about what you think would be a clear thesis statement. Remember, your thesis statement needs to outline what you're going to talk about in this essay, and of course, that's the advantages and disadvantages of working from home. Here's what mine looks like. This essay will talk about the pros and cons of this change in work culture. So I've reworded advantages and disadvantages to be pros and cons, and I've called it a change in work culture. And that's because I talked about the past, and then I talk about the present now with recently. And here is our introduction done. We're now ready to begin writing our first body paragraph about the advantages. Recall the double idea paragraph structure here at the top, and we're going to begin with our topic sentence. So, which option is the best topic sentence? Let us know now. I'm going to give you 3 options, A, B, or C, and I'll read them to you now. A, people can now work for companies in other places. B, Firstly, let's look at the positive things about remote work. Or C, in my opinion, working from home is bad. Which one of these options is best as a topic sentence for my first body paragraph where I'm outlining the advantages? If you chose option B, you are correct. Firstly, let's look at the positive things about remote work. Point 1 is all about work-life balance, and here's how I've phrased it in a sentence. To begin with, it helps with work-life balance. I'm now ready to extend using the point that I had made in my plan, and let's change this dot point, this idea, into a sentence. I want to hear from you now. Type your answer into the chat. How would you change this dot point, more time for personal hobbies and family, into a proper sentence in our essay? I'll give you a moment now. Here's how I have written it. Cutting down on the commute every day gives more time for personal care, family, and hobbies. So I've explained a factor of work-life balance. I've explained a certain part of work-life balance, and that is how there's less time spent commuting or driving, and how that allows for personal care and family and hobbies. Now, recalling our essential essay tip, it's really important that we use examples and explanations. We've done a great example here, but can we explain this further? Can we explain a benefit of this? This can make employees less stressed and happier with their jobs. So we've shown an advantage, we've shown an example, and then we've explained that example in depth by showing a benefit of it. Moving on to point 2 about more job options. Let's fill in this blank here. Another blank to working from home is the career opportunities it offers. What word would fit well here? Let us know your ideas in the chat now. Remember what the paragraph is about when helping you to figure out what that blank is there. I've written upside. Another upside to working from home is the career opportunities it offers. There could be many possible answers here. You could have said another advantage, another benefit, another positive aspect. There's many ways to phrase that, as you can see. And I'm now going to extend on this point. People can now work for companies in other places. This means they can live anywhere and still do their job well. Notice that when I extend my point, sometimes I use 2 sentences. This allows me to fully address the point that I've made and give an example and also explain it. And that's our first body paragraph complete. Let's get into the second body paragraph where we look at the disadvantages. Notice at the top here, we follow the double idea paragraph structure again, and we're going to begin with a topic sentence. My topic sentence sounds like this. However, there are also some challenges with working from home. Okay, so I've used the phrase work from home or working from home quite a bit. So let's think about a way that we can reword this phrase, working from home. Here are some options for you. Could I say A, flexible work arrangements, B, careers, or C, industries? Which one do you think fits best? Type your answer into the chat box now. A, B, or C, what would be a good option to reword working from home? If you chose A, flexible work arrangements, that's correct. So, on that point, vocabulary is a really important tip that we've highlighted here today, an essential tip to our essay writing. But there's a catch. It's really important that we use vocabulary appropriately and relevantly in the situation that we're looking at. So sometimes we might come up with some great words or some great synonyms for things, but it might not be the most appropriate word choice for that particular sentence. So knowing the context is really important, And that can be the difference between a really good score and perhaps an average score. So make sure you're careful with that vocabulary. Of course, when we look at the example that was just given, it might have been quite awkward in the sentence to use careers or industries. It wouldn't have sounded correct. So choosing the context is really important. Now we're going to talk about the first disadvantage of feeling lonely and isolated. So one problem is that people might feel lonely and isolated from their team. Let's now extend this point about no face-to-face interactions. So we need to use examples and explanations here. That's an essential essay tip. How can we expand on this point about face-to-face interactions? Let us know an idea in the chat. Type us a sentence. How can we explain this idea of face-to-face interactions and an example that we could provide? Let us know. What could be an example sentence we could write about this point being made? Here's how I've phrased it. When there are less face-to-face interactions, this may lead to decreased teamwork and results. So when I'm thinking about my essential essay tip of using examples and explanations, I want to think about what would happen with this example or explain the example in more detail. Our second disadvantage is about mixing work and personal life. So let's fill in the blank together. Another issue is when the line between an employee's personal and work life becomes blank. What is an appropriate word choice here? Let us know your ideas in the chat. There could be several possible answers here. I've written unclear, but you might have also written something like blurry when the line between an employee's personal and work life becomes blurry or unclear. Great. And then we need to extend on this point. We need to expand with examples and evidence and explanations. So I'm going to lead my example with for instance. For instance, workers might find it hard to stop working and take a break. This could lead to burnout, which would impact their well-being. So I have explained the impact of trouble taking breaks and how that would look like for an employee. And that is our second body paragraph complete. We've now identified the disadvantages in detail. It's time to move on to our conclusion. So we're going to begin by making a broad statement. In conclusion, having the choice to work from home has changed the traditional work style. And notice that this is similar to when I introduced the topic in the beginning, in the introduction. I then need to summarize my arguments and my opinions. So let us know in the chat, yes or no. Should we summarize the two advantages and disadvantages? Should we just say there are advantages and disadvantages? Yes or no? Should we summarize both the advantages and both the disadvantages? The answer is yes, and here's the first one. It is positive because it helps with work-life balance and finding better jobs. I've referenced both the advantages, work-life balance and job opportunities. And then I've identified the disadvantages again. There are also disadvantages like feeling isolated and mixing work with personal life. There are two disadvantages again. Now, an option is also at the end to add a personal opinion. So what do you think? Do you think working from home is good now that you've understood the advantages and disadvantages? Answer yes or no in the chat now. Is working from home good? We may differ on our opinions, but this is how I've concluded my final paragraph, my conclusion. I think workers should be allowed to work from home, but only for up to 2 days a week. Great, and that is the conclusion finished. Now, before we can move on, it's important that we check our work. And there are a few things that we need to look out for. we need to think about our spelling and punctuation. This means that we're looking for spelling errors, we're looking for places of our commas, our full stops, our apostrophes, those types of things. Grammar is a really important part of essay writing. It appears on criterias whether you're taking an English test or an English assignment, and we need to think about things like sentence structure and our tenses, so whether you're writing in the past or present, those types of things. Your flow of your essay. What this means is, do you use paragraphs to organize your ideas? Do your ideas follow a logical sequence? And do they flow well from one paragraph to another and from one sentence to another? You also need to think about, have you responded to the prompt properly? So this means, did you use proper relevant ideas, and did you also stay on topic and do what the prompt asked you to do? Now, checking our work at the end of our essay is a really important step, and I have one trick to help you with this. So oftentimes we proofread our work by just skimming through and reading our writing, but one trick that I use and I encourage my students to use is reading our writing out loud as if we're presenting it to a class, reading it aloud, even if it's a whisper, because that will help you listen for some grammar mistakes or other types of mistakes, and you'll be able to hear if your sentences make sense and also if your essay flows well. So you'll be able to check for a lot of the things that we've spoken about today if you actually read aloud and listen for those types of things. Awesome. Here is our essay in full. So if you'd like to take a moment now, you can take a screenshot of this essay in full from top to bottom. And this is after it has been checked fully. And let's now recap our lesson. What you learned today, we learned how to analyze an essay prompt. So thinking about what type of essay it is and using the background information to help us with those clues. We learned how to use the E2 essential structure. So the overall structure of the essay, but then also the double idea paragraphs for our body paragraphs, really important. We learned how to plan an essay, so using a point and then extending upon that point. And of course, we've learned now how to confidently write an essay using those tips and tricks and those two essential tips of using vocabulary lists, but also using examples and evidence. Here it is now. You can see that there. Now, if you'd like more practice, the downloadable is available for you. You can click the link to download. There is an additional essay prompt there available for you that you can use to practice your essay writing, and the E2 essay structure is also available there for you. And of course, if you want to further your English, your reading, your listening, your speaking skills, check out our affordable English courses at e2english.com. And we'd love to know from you now, what would you like to see in the next live class? Put your suggestions in the chat now. Is it reading? Is it speaking? Is it listening? Would you like more writing practice? Let us know in the live chat. What would you like to see more of? And I look forward to reading your suggestions so that we can plan the next one. Thank you so much for joining us in this live class on essay writing. We look forward to seeing you in the next class, and hopefully those tips and tricks have helped you now with essay writing. Thanks, everyone.